Welcome back, everyone, to Montgomery County's Engage at Home, brought to you by the county's Caregiver Support Program. Today, we are focusing on Montgomery County's adult protective services and the services we provide for our public. Our guest today is Mario. Mario, welcome, and would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Lily. And it's terrific to be here today. And yeah, as you say, Mario Wawrzusin, I'm the administrator for Adult Protective Services and Care Management Services. And been with the Department of Health and Human Services for a little over 30 years. And glad to serve our public.
Thank you. And it's really terrific to have you here. So I think what would be a good place to start is really to break down what is adult protective services. There's a lot of misunderstanding and apprehension around adult protective services, and I know you could help people have a more calmer understanding about what we do.
In my career, I have been a caseworker providing non-APS services, as well as adult protective service investigations, ongoing services, guardianship work. And I was fortunate also to have worked in nursing home environments and in the community and in the different jurisdictions in Maryland and in Washington, D.C. So in terms of APS, or we would call it APS, Adult Protective Services, the overall goal of the program is to provide professional services that protect the health, safety, and welfare of endangered and vulnerable adults. In general, for elder abuse, that refers to intentional or neglectful acts by a caregiver or trusted individual that lead to or may lead to harm of a vulnerable elder. And we have found that elder abuse can occur anywhere, in a home, in nursing homes, other institutions. It crosses all socioeconomic strata, groups, cultures, and races. So it's an important service that we do, and our goal is to protect those individuals 18 and older through 100 plus that have some type of vulnerability, which in the Code of Maryland regulations is defined as someone who's really unable to take care of their daily needs. We call them activities of daily living, their ability to shower independently, get dressed, or prepare meals, pay their bills, to keep their life running. And if there's dementia that's set in, perhaps a stroke, heart issues, Alzheimer's disease, sometimes that can impair an individual and make them more susceptible to abuse or not even being able to care for themselves. We call that self-neglect.
Thank you. And I think that's one of the things that is really important for people to understand, that sometimes there is abuse that is intentional, but oftentimes there is neglect, self-neglect, or neglect that's really being conducted by a caregiver that then is troubling and can really lead to health problems and life-threatening issues.
Right. So what we actually see, and in the state of Maryland, we have 4 areas of abuse that we are charged to investigate. And we have professional social workers and nurses that are on my team, and our screeners are also licensed social workers. And so they're always going to be able to receive that call, talk through what the allegation might be, and they're going to look at, is there self-neglect, which is the most common occurrence, where someone just, because perhaps they have developed dementia or Alzheimer's disease, they're no longer able to remember to eat or to shower. The home starts falling into disrepair. Their basic hygiene is not occurring anymore. If they live with a son or daughter that perhaps is not doing their job the way they need to or ought to, for whatever reason, there will be warning signs that a neighbor or someone in the community or in your faith community might notice the lack of hygiene. They're not utilizing their walker or cane, and they're falling. The home is falling into disrepair. No one's collecting the mail or cutting the grass or making sure different homemaking chores are attended to. So these are all warning signs. We call them some of the red flags of neglect or abuse. And that would be a reason to give Adult Protective Services here in Montgomery County a phone call. And I understand that you're going to post that phone number. We do like to have that conversation. The number is 240-777-3000, and we can certainly receive an email as well. However, we like to have the conversation so we can hear a little bit about what you as a concerned neighbor or citizen are seeing, and see what we can do to try to mitigate that risk.
Exactly. And one of the things that you have shared with me, that not every call that comes in that is a concerned call, neighbor, relative, member of a faith community, oftentimes your team is able to connect with the family, have a frank conversation, and that can actually empower the family to take a more proactive role, particularly in the area where maybe the older adult is still living independently.
Right, that's a good point, and it reminds me of a personal story. Whereas my mother-in-law up in Massachusetts, very independent Irish woman who was a caregiver for her son who had a intellectual developmental challenge his whole life because of brain cancer when he was 10, and really managed a lot of different things, a school teacher and so forth. But as she was aging, hip issues, knee issues, some early stage of dementia, forgetfulness, things were just piling up on her and piling up around the house. So a concerned neighbor called Massachusetts APS. Of course, we live here in Maryland, and I work for APS, and so we got the call. So trying to respect my mother-in-law and her self-determination. We couldn't push too hard, but once we got the call from APS, that really changed the tone of the conversation. Things were shifting. There were elements. They brought up some key and significant elements of risk. And so that gave us the opportunity to plan together with APS family to support my mother-in-law, who was able to remain in her home for an additional 5 years.
Wow.
But because of that call, we were able to put in some supports like personal care aid 2 or 3 days a week. Made a huge difference. And when my mother-in-law had a stroke, that personal care aid, we made sure there were some resources available. So we made sure she followed her to the nursing home to keep continuity going and so forth. And just really had formed a very loving and caregiving relationship, which worked out very well for her. But APS, well, you're right, was the catalyst to engage family members to support a loved one when they need that type of support. They may not realize it, but that really can make a difference, that call.
Exactly. Thank you. And I'm glad that you were willing to share that story, because I hear all the time from caregivers that they are caught in that bind of self-determination, and that they want to actually respect of their loved one, but that growing anxiety that oftentimes they have when they see their loved one starting to really become unable to fully care for themselves. So I think we do need to pivot, though, and acknowledge that sometimes there are issues where there is abuse. There is a situation where there could be something quite troubling, and that's also another area that we want people to report.
Yes, and though thankfully that's the least common reports that we receive, we certainly do receive them. 15% or thereabouts of our caseloads involve physical or sexual abuse. And warning signs of that would be unexplained fractures, bruises, black eyes, cuts, sores, burns. Those, explanations at a doctor's office that aren't congruent with that particular injury. Be it sexual, it could be unexplained sexual transmitted disease. If there's been choking, there could be marks around the neck. Could be marks on someone's wrists or arms if they're being handled forcefully by a caregiver. So those types of situations we clearly want to hear about. It's high risk, and our job is to implement a safety plan. And we do have, we're very active with our Montgomery County Elder Vulnerable Adult Abuse Task Force. So we meet monthly and more often as needed. So if something's serious, we're going to certainly talk with our partners, with emergency medical services, fire rescue, who can sometimes go out and see these situations and report that to APS. With our police, there's an elder abuse unit with Montgomery County Police, our state attorney's office. They have a CASVA unit, crimes against vulnerable adults and seniors. And our health department, we have a health department nurse that joins us regularly, our public guardianship program, ombudsman program, which those are the advocates in our nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and a terrific partner of ours with the Office on Aging and the county attorney's office. If we need to do something civil, we have that opportunity to pursue guardianship when either the individual no longer can make decisions on behalf of themselves, for medical or financial situations. We have that avenue we would pursue. The last thing we pursue, we're always trying to do the least restrictive. We're always balancing. APS is about balancing safety versus autonomy, that self-determination. And it's a tricky balance at times. Folks, can be fairly independent, but start having deterioration in certain areas, and over time it can equate to the need for additional assistance. So, and one of the risk factors for being taken advantage of financially, we didn't talk a lot about financial exploitation. That's the second most occurring situation, where an individual's assets, property, income is being used not for them as it should be, but for whoever that person who's exploiting them. They're taking that money. And we've had some significant cases over the last few years, and we're certainly working with a lot of our clients on exploitation situations as well.
Yeah, thank you. And you talked about it earlier, about this idea of the team, that everyone who works on this team is highly qualified. Many of them have a minimum degree of a social work qualification. So it means that when someone is reporting, that they are going to be really heard by someone who has the knowledge, the clinical expertise, plus the compassion to be able to really break down what it is that's being discussed. Sadly, I do hear of people who hold back from reporting because they feel as if everything is going to go straight to the courts, where what you've described is that oftentimes a lot of these situations, fortunately, are able to be remedied by intervention.
Right, Lily, that's true. And that's why I provided an example with my own family. It was the opportunity for a family to realize, there was a deterioration, there was a need for further support, and it got us all to the table. So that's what we're asking. If you see something, one of these warning signs, red flags of abuse or neglect, to give APS a call. And Now, there's a myth out there that if Adult Protective Services shows up, that means that individual is going to be placed in a nursing home, which is absolutely not the case at all. You know, we're all about the least restrictive intervention. How can we engage the client, the family, to help them flourish in their own home to the extent that that's possible, feasible.
Exactly. Thank you. I know that there are mandatory reporters. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. The mandated reporters by law are human service professionals, such as social workers, nurses that are working for our department, medical professionals, so a physician, a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, even a certified nursing assistant who's doing the personal care services in the community. They are mandated reporters. The police are mandated reporters. We also now expect the banks and financial institutions to report since 2012 if there's a suspected financial exploitation. So they're reporters. I'm trying to think if I missed anybody. Those are the main reporters. However, we all have a civic duty, and I would encourage everyone that if you see something, say something. And that once happened on a case. It was a Sunday night, as I recall. There was folks in a restaurant, and they noticed and they were right, a son feeding his elderly, force feeding, frankly, his elderly mother, like at a Denny's, and you know, frankly, there was psychological abuse attending there as well. A lot of times, psychological, emotional abuse will go hand in hand with neglect or physical abuse, and it turned out that this elderly woman was really being disrespected, was being force fed, and it was just so bad that folks started. They called 911. EMS went out, emergency medical service, the ambulance folks. They contacted Adult Protective Services, and we were immediately able to get her to a safe place, hospitalized. But that's because there were folks that didn't even know these individuals. So something isn't right here, and this is just, you know, this poor woman. And fortunately, we were able to put in a safety plan for her. That caregiver that son wasn't doing the right thing by his mom.
Yeah, and sadly, that's one of the things that happens. You know, fortunately, we have the county really trying to provide education and support for caregivers, but sometimes there are folk who are either out of their depth or they're not the best match to be providing the high level of care that oftentimes vulnerable older adults need. And situations happen. I'm just going to remind everyone the phone number to call for reporting or really just to have a conversation about a situation is the county's Aging and Disability Resource Unit, 240-777-3000. Additionally, Mario has mentioned a range of other resources which are freely available through the county, and I will include links to those in the description with this episode. Mario, you've really shared a lot of information with us, and one area that I think people would like to know about is a large public program that you run every year in conjunction with World Elder Abuse Week. Little different this year, but if you could share information about that so people have it on their calendar for next year.
Sure thing. Yes, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is June 15th every year, and that's been in existence for 13, 14 years. It was originated by the World Health Organization, and we have participated for 10 years, albeit last year we had to pivot and do some things online. We normally have a big event at a local senior center, Holiday Park Senior Center, Rockville Senior Center. And then we do smaller educational events at other facilities, other rec centers typically throughout the county. And so the goal really is to bring our partners, certainly the partners of the Elder Abuse Task Force, because this really is a task force operation, and then other resources to bear and to be available to the community, our caregivers, as well as our seniors and those of interest. So it's usually that week, that third week or so of June. And I'm already, as the chair for the Elder Abuse Task Force on, we call it WEAD, I'm trying to think of what we can do, most likely in a virtual format. And I'm thinking maybe doing some type of a walkathon at your own. You could do it on your own with a t-shirt or something like that, because I've been participating in those types of events with the Family Justice Center, which is another partner of ours for domestic violence. And that's what they came up with, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. Look, get a little exercise. You could do it in your bubble, wear a mask, and then, we'd like to hear more about that. Maybe I could work with you, Lily, because you could advertise it and help us with all of your IT and virtual skill sets. So yeah, thank you for asking. That would be mid-June.
Wonderful. And, as you said, that we are pivoting all the time on how to make sure that we continue to bring resources and supports to the public. So we know that people can report issues of concern regarding an adult, and that's someone 18 and above, 240-777-3000. The description with this episode is going to have a lot of information, a lot more information about this area. And really, we want to encourage our viewers to not just sit back. If there is something that they see that's troubling them, if it's out in the public straight away, step up and, as needed, call in the authorities. And if not, give us a call. If it's a neighbour, someone who you know, it could be another relative, give us a call, because a vulnerable older adult cannot advocate for themselves. They need you. So, Mario, we are at the end of our time together today. Any final words that you have that you would like to share with our audience?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for your attention. This is a difficult subject matter at times, but important. However, I also want to emphasize that as caregivers, as this being National Caregivers Month, the vast majority of caregivers do a really good job. Sometimes they need a little extra help, a little support, a little guidance, and APS can be one of those tools to make an even safer, vital plan for that senior or vulnerable adult. So thank you for your time, Lily.
Thank you, Mario. So you have been watching Engage at Home, brought to you by Montgomery County's Caregiver Support Program. I always like to remind people to stay healthy and stay calm.